Oh, welcome back everybody. We're working on the first carrying beam for this deck, and so the first project we needed to, or the first aspect of this that we needed to tackle was locating the top surface. If we're going to add a 5/4 board, which should be 1.25 inches thick, and it's about an inch, and then they dry and they're more like 7/8 of an inch. We wanted the top surface of those boards to basically be at the surface of the lower end of the threshold. So we played around. I don't have a laser level as much as a laser transit, so like the tripod doesn't have a Z axis. I can't like crank up and like raise and lower this the way I'd like. I have to reset the feet of it, but we basically found where that level, that laser came through an inch down from there. Then it was, from there I figured I could reach all of the posts, which I did. I just kind of look for a place where, we're gonna see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and from right over top of this thing we could see 8 over there. So anyway, I just kind of, just want to set this up once and do this project once. So we ran around, found the line, threw it in pencil on the post, like here, and then we measured down 9 1/4 after we made sure that's what the true measurement of the 2x10s is right now, and translated that around 3 inches deep, all with the speed square. And then I wanted to slice through here a half a dozen or 8 or 10 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then you can just kind of take a cat's paw and break those little chunks up. Here they are here. They all came out of there. But the problem is 3 inches deep is further than it's deeper than you can cut with an ordinary 7 1/4 inch circular saw. So it's a headache kind of to use a full size circular saw, 7 1/4, in terms of how deep this can reach. You can't get the rest of the blade even to the arbor, or I guess practically to the arbor. That's about it. Due to the arbor, you can't get the full half the dimension. Anyway, so making headers, you can't cut them. Cutting 4x4s in half, you can't cut them. Notching for double carrying beams and beam in deck posts, you can't do it easy. So I have to, in the past I finished with a Sawzall, yada yada yada. I got that big 10 1/4 you may have seen on Instagram. This is a relatively old, I want to say 90s, 10 1/4, but it's in beautiful shape. The cord hasn't been chopped up. There's almost no sparking. You can change the brushes on a motor like that, so that'll be good for a long time. The incremental, Z, the depth of cut can easily be adjusted. It's got this handle, and it came in a big heavy steel box. And these are like retail $400 or something right now, for something. And I got this for $150 on Facebook Marketplace, which was a nice score. Has the edge guide there for ripping big widths, and something else, all the handle and stuff. So anyway, he will cut to a depth of 3 9/16, so you can cut 2x4s. You can cut through a 2x4 the long way. You can cut the ends off of headers. You can notch these posts the way I needed. So that's what I got it, ran out and grabbed it, zip, 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 zip through those, knocked all those pieces out of there. Then I break out the polyurethane again. Where is it now? I've hidden it down this. Oh, nope, that's quad. That's quad. That's another urethane, but, oh, it's hanging on here. So then I get out the roof sealant, roof and flashing. It's black. I like this because it's sticky and doesn't really ever harden up completely. It's kind of like a mastic tar from the 21st century, essentially. So anyway, I smeared that all around, top, back, and bottom of all the notches. Then I set the first layer of, the beam in there. And then I like to do this here. It's kind of like Monster Energy drink. I guess it's got an extra. Anyway, I put another fresh bead in the inside corner at the top, and a few vertical lines that don't quite make it to the bottom. And so I'd like to think that when we add the second layer, these are pockets that drain. If moisture were to somehow find its way into here, it may not find its way further, and it'll come down and roll out. So that's the idea here. And we're gonna put a second layer on. So we did a 16-foot, and we ended up needing more than 8. We needed 9 feet and some. So I used a 12 there instead of half of a 16. And because the deck ended up being longer than what you can do with 2 16-foot pieces of lumber, or what does that mean? 3. So a full one, half of one, then a full one over here, and the other half of the first. So rather than being able to do that, this is over 24 feet wide, so you can't get away with that. Anyway, so we use the 12 here, then we're going to come through with another 16 and the better part of a 12 there, and then we'll 1, 2, 3 with timber, through lock screws. We'll look at those two in a another video here. So come back when we've got this put together and we'll maybe look at those screws when we're putting the last one in. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you. Hey, welcome back everybody. Things are looking pretty great. Wouldn't you agree? This is our cast iron tree grate. This is what we can get from the architectural salvage locally. This is $400 worth of cast iron. And there's a stack of them up there. I may use these again. I had hoped that because these are designed to be cut back as the tree grows, and there's all different kinds of, you can go crazy and spend several times that on decorator ones or designer ones. You could pay me to draw you something in CAD and burn it out a 1/2-inch plate or inch plate, whatever you want on a CNC. But this is the cost-effective way. This has got some Buffalo history. I don't think it was made here, but it's from Niagara Falls, city of Niagara Falls. They were around the trees there before a civil engineering project removed them, what have you. Anyway, this is a signature sort of detail to the whole deck itself. I had hoped that there'd be a circle that fit into the square, and I was going to cut, trim it back to that circle and actually do cast iron grate inlay that was circular on the outside. We didn't get that lucky, so a square is going to be what it is, and it is what it is. But the point is that it'll still look great. Now, our outer corner is curved, and again, so you can see this one we sketched in here. That was sketched in using the tree as a center, and so the circular grate and everything was sort of concentric. Had a concentricity about it here. Since we're going with a square and we could add some more surface area, we bumped over, our lower deck footprint is over here now, and this is going to be complicated enough to swing around this corner. And in fact, this actually may become less or a greater radius, basically, depending on what I'm able to get the wood to do. We'll do another video where we talk about resawing that joist into several thin layers and laying them in, doing curved layer after layer with the thin layers, laminating them up in place to get that to do that. I haven't done a lot of that, and you're better off with it wet. And steam bending is another thing you can get into. I really hope Rue didn't just escape through the gate. Well, we'll find her. What am I getting at? It's exciting. We got here today. What I did was I started with building the 2x4 ledger that this is going to sit onto, and so that is going to be a part of the deck framing, this 2x4 square. And then, I threw some angled pieces in here, some gussets to control it for square. I checked that it was square and installed those, so it is perfectly square and 4 feet on the outside with a butt and pass, screwed together with deck screws. And then I knew somewhere in here would be the elevation where we get away from that bugle kind of shape to the base of a tree trunk, and we get in closer to just the diameter of the trunk itself. So we have an elevation game to play here. We can probably lower it. I'd like this area of the lower deck to be what feels like one step up from the ground, but we don't want that ridge, we don't want that rim joist to actually touch the dirt. It's nice to have the more space the better. We're going to go with about 1 inch away if we can help it at the tightest spot up here, so it's high here and everything goes down and is lower over there. So everywhere away from here is downhill. So anyway, I'd like to, and we can dig this dirt down some, of course, but in the end of the day, the tightest that rim joist is going to be to the ground is about 1 inch. And then it'll open up a little bit more, but we will also add, because if you have 1 inch and you have a 7 1/4 2x8, and then you have a 1 inch deck board, so you got 8 1/4 total, plus the inch gap is 9 1/4. That's a pretty large step up for a lot of people, but it's the that's the most we can squeeze everything, basically. Best case scenario in any given location: ground, 1 inch, 7 1/4 2x8, 1 inch deck board. So we got a 9 1/4 scenario, and then we can add dirt over in that area, and it may not even be necessary all the way around, but we've got to find that elevation. So I put 4 stakes in the ground on the inside corners of this grate, and I did as much as I could to put them in exactly where we needed them, but I in fact had to drill into the roots of the tree and just pack those. They only went down 6 or 7 inches until they became tight. So I used a 1 inch auger bit that you normally use to put like a silcock into the ridge joist on a home, or the rim joist on a home. I went straight down into the tree root with it, and then these are like a pencil sharpener end on these stakes, so they found that hole, and I smashed them down into that hole as far as they would possibly go. So they're pretty rigid, end of the day. Now, say it's close to the inside, because if I pull them in tightly to all 4 of these, they're not plumb and it's just a product of them being old and twisted, and I can't, you know, these are things that you can do in the computer that you can't do in real life, suffice to say. So it was a good thought. It got me pretty close, but I will be shimming it, and I will be pulling the tape measure from it to, you know, this guy. I just stuck him on there, but he's, you know, essentially outlines the back surface of those posts. I checked him for straightness, but I need to copy the same dimension from him to here as well as from him to there to know that that's parallel to that. And then those corner braces control the squareness of this. And then I know this as an item out here in space is square to this deck, which means that when we come through here to this square with the deck boards on their layout as they come through here, there won't be a weird cope that I need to do over the length of this here. He'll be, you know, if anything, he'll fall right in a gap for a deck board. I may start here and fill in that direction, start there and fill in that direction. Who knows? But anyway, I don't want to betray the fact that he's a little twisted in the deck board, you know, in the application of the deck boards. So, that being said, that's going to be the most important thing. I've also got this coming through from the side of that post back there, through the side of this one and out here. I went left and right until it, you know, just touched that post and set that in the ground. And I can also check the dimension from here to there and there to there, which has got a little bit of give. So between the two things, the first one that I mentioned being the most important, I will get this dialed in where I want it, and then elevation will come up and down. The other thing about elevation is we want to divide out our stairs from this surface to that surface appropriately. I don't want to be squeezed to the point where I have to have 6-inch tall stairs, because to have one fewer step would make them wildly too tall. I'd like to be at 7.5 or so in terms of a step, the height of a step. So I'm going to play with the difference between this surface and divide that, and I'll move this thing down a little until I've got a nice amount of appropriately sized stairs. And it's all going to be variable until we work through it like I'm talking about now, in an order of importance. The last thing is I did my best to center this circle on the tree, and what I want is I don't really like, you know, the greater area, you know, greater gap there, narrower gap there. We're going to go that way as well, but side to side in this orientation is looking pretty good to me. If anything, we could go that way a tiny bit, but ideally, you imagine the tree is going to grow in circumference about its center equally, and so when the time comes to trim this thing back, I don't want to have to come and trim it back, take this circle off because we're touching it here, and then we end up with a 5 or a 6-inch gap in this spot there. It's where you lose the dog's ball if you're playing with the dog or anything else, you know, and it also looks bad. So we're going to look for a perfect center, you know, when we install it, and we'll just trust the tree. You hear that? We're going to trust you to grow evenly. And so, you know, we have the ability. So anyway, it's maybe a little counterintuitive if you don't do a lot of constructing, but we're going to start right here where everything comes together. It needs to look perfect, and then we'll build, you know, we'll complement it, and we'll come up and land against it with the rest of our construction out here. And that's going to be a best practice as far as I'm concerned. We'll be digging all these posts with the backhoe now that it's here, because we had a problem with square here, if you can believe it. We had to dig to one side of all these outer posts and move over an inch or so and then backfill them again. That was frustrating. I didn't realize that this addition isn't square to the house. I had checked it a little, but I didn't check it enough. And it's actually a little obtuse, and so all of the distances to these posts are the same. However, they were over this way too much. So we just took everything as an entire unit, and, you know, we dug out, like I said, I picked up in the middle with the skid steer and shimmied over that way. Everything went, and we just made sure that these were nice and plumb again and backfilled the holes. Just took us a couple days to get through that whole scenario. Anyway, we ended up here with the backhoe, so we're going to dig our post holes out here with the backhoe. And that's what's up with that. It's getting pretty exciting. Can't wait to see this framing. Can't wait to show you what I'm going to do here and try and get that to curve around the corner. And then we got joists to fill in and deck boards finally. And once we've got decks, I can go up on there with a ladder and finish around the door. And as far as the stairs, our stringers are just going to start on this beam, and they will there'll be joists in here like this, and their layout will just be to the one side of all the joist layouts. So the stringer will go right on by the joist and be, you know, through locked to it tightly right along, boom, 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 and that'll keep all the stringer layouts on 16 inches on center, and then we'll just have long 20-foot deck boards that go over all the way. And this line here is approximately where the stairs are gonna stop there, and then we'll have deck over to here, and obviously like that. So got to get back to this full steam, because we've got another whole deck to completely construct on a site this year. And I know he's waiting for me. I'm trying, I'm rushing, I'm hustling. All right, we'll see you. Welcome back. Just finishing up on a Friday. We put in what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of the 9 posts we need for the lower deck. We got one more here, and one more over there. The issue is roots. I mean, there's quite a few big pieces that we've had to cut off here. You know, if you've ever seen a tree that's blown over, they run along just under the ground, and a lot of species, for the most part, a lot of people sometimes picture like the same system, like the limb system, but underneath the ground going down deep, but a lot of them just run along a foot or two underneath the biggest ones. Like I say, most species. So anyway, this whole surface, the closer you are to the tree, the more completely solid big root system it is. I had a heck of a time getting these posts, or these stakes in to hold the grate where we wanted it, and I was going to put a post right next to it, and I changed the layout here for several reasons. It's healthier for the tree not to cut off all the biggest roots, but the further away we get, the more of a chance I'll have of being able to dig without a big problem. Over here, a couple roots that I could break off easily. Over there, no problem. Just this much closer to the trunk, about twice as close. I mean, that's about, say that's 10 feet, and this is about 5. Way too many roots here. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I'm going to have to get in there and dig with the Sawzall again, which is what I was doing and what I had to do over here and over there. Once again, those couple spots, no problem. So we get in there to 48 inches and we drop our little 4,000 PSI precast concrete cookie footing down in there. You can see that bad boy. And for today, I've just set these all. I kind of pick this when they're shorter posts. I can't do it with 16s or 20s, but one guy can pick up and sort of hammer, you know, that concrete footing and just tamp it down real nice. We're going to get some rain today for the next 2 days. It will settle all that dirt around the footing and settle the footing itself, and with the post sitting on top of it, we won't lose track of where it is. But these all need to be, you know, these couple here need to be aligned to those posts. These couple out here are aligned on that system there, and their distance from the house needs to be the same. But for the most part, I'm actually pretty glad that we moved to the backhoe to do this digging. That auger is really nice, and otherwise this soil is perfect auger soil. It's just nice gravel ground here. It's mostly beautiful, easy digging, you know. Sometimes you get a rock in there, you know, about that size, maybe something a little larger, but ideal for that. The roots are a big issue. That's a heck of a problem for a big auger. The bigger diameter auger, the longer the lever arm that you've got from the center of it, and the easier a time roots have of limiting how much torque you can put down, etc. So again, better off with the backhoe here. Still running into some issues, but I'm not being hounded or haunted by the time. You know, the longer I keep the auger, the more rental cost there is, whereas this can just sit here. I don't need it for anything else right now. So we did have to take the center post out of the gate because it wouldn't fit back here the way the MT85 did. But overall, pretty good progress for one day. We've been in and out of this job around when the truck was broken, and now it's around weather. But we're making it happen either way. You know, when we can get here, we get here. So next week, I'm thinking we'll get these posts buried, get them all where they belong, and start tying them together with beams and rim joists, and get a real sense of what the lower deck's going to look like. Still have to pick an elevation. I want to come down a little bit from where that's, you know, sitting there, but I'm actually going to literally use the edge of this to place this course. You know, I want to be sure that when I notch the 2x8 carrying beam into this course of posts, that to marry that 2x4 to the side of that beam tightly keeps that grill, that grate, right where we want to be around the tree. And since you saw this before, I have, you know, adjusted it. So we have essentially the same gap in the tightest areas. You know, he's tight there. It is kind of bigger here, but I essentially averaged the tightest spot. So there and there, you know, and over here and over there are all pretty even. And so it looks like it's actually nicer than some of the trees that are planted in something like this and left to grow up. Sometimes they grow off way off center. They don't look as good. So dialed that in. And anyway, then when we've backfilled around the posts through there, then we can start moving that up and down And all we have to do is go over to that beam again when we've decided on our elevation that we like, and then stick it to the beam and commit. Whereas right now, going up and down, again, in the computer you can go up and down those stakes. If I were to represent that in the computer, slide it up and down, no problem. But when you're just one guy, that weighs quite a bit, and every little bit that you move down on one corner torques and twists the rest of it. Plus the stakes aren't plumb because I had to drill into the root system of the tree just to put them in the ground. And so again, we'll have to deal with real life problems there. Anyway, oh, and another real life problem is that this machine is dripping hydraulic fluid all the time when it sits around. And just when I got to work today, I realized it was so low that I had to top it up. I had to put a 5-gallon, $100 and some 5-gallon pail of high guard had to go into it first, and I had to make that trip before I could even get started. So it took us a little bit of time. We may have gotten a little farther here by quitting time, but again, pretty happy. Got to pick up some tools, and we'll be back next week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. We've gotten a lot of rain, but I've also gotten a lot of help, thankfully. Got all those posts on layout. My buddy Evan was home for a week from Arizona, so he was here. His dad's a general contractor, so it's just great to have skilled help. Put everybody on layout. Got all the holes backfilled, and then we did our little mini vacation over last weekend. But then this week, I was able to quickly notch all these and, you know, fill all the notches with that PL flashing and set all the 2x8 beams in. Nobody has been laminated together yet. It's just the big connections at all the posts. And so tomorrow, I will be, again, laminating everyone, you know. That's 4 screws every 16 inches all the way down. This beam, this beam, this beam. And I actually never got this one, so that's 5 screws every 16 inches. I'll get all those in. I've got some clamp, you know, I've got some situations where I'll use clamps to pull the pairs coplanar, you know, a little better than they want to be right now. I've got some problems here and stuff like that. And also the power plane, after I've done as much as I can with that. And then we'll stick the ledger for the grate to this beam at the right elevation. However, this is the worst place, just typical, where the two different 2x8s are at different heights, and we are going to be doing our deck board layout like this, and so I want to be so careful about the elevation of this and the surface of the deck, because I'd like the cast iron to be like quarter of an inch lower than the surface of the deck, just to give it a little bit of a detail. Being flush is one thing, but I like to have a little bit of I certainly wouldn't want it a little proud or sticking up. So we're going to try and be a little down from the surface of the deck. And that's with the wet boards. Of course, they're going to shrink up and dry, so we may end up being flush. So I'm going to I'll go a hard quarter of an inch, and then we may still have an 1/8 after the boards dry down and thin out a little. That's tomorrow, and so that means I got to leap across with a couple of joists on either side of that, and maybe get into here. I've got rim joists, you know, these are all left long, so I've got these to cut, do some notching here, and at the other end, like rim joists, sorry, at the back side, rim joists, and a few sticks to hold up this ledger and throw the grate back on out of our way. The idea being no rim joists at the front yet, and no floor joists beyond that, because I have to bring up the level of the ground underneath all these joists over here to about 1 inch. So we're going to run out Friday with the dump trailer, get a bunch of dirt, and I'm leaving a lot of that out of there because I can dump it in the driveway. I can come right in through the gate, you know, after I remove the pieces, and drive right in here and sprinkle it back through this bay. I can reach over this way or come around and throw it in on the other side of the couple joists that we need here, and I can throw it right here on the ground. Then I'll grade it around with the rake, roll the plastic, put the pea gravel on top. And because we've got to add so much out here as like a berm and all the way around, I'm not going to add all of that much inside because there's no point. But I don't want to make a big low spot on plastic where water can sit and mosquitoes can grow and it can be stagnant and yucky. So the surface inside of the berm that gets you up to 1 step up is all going to go downhill that way, and all of the rainwater and downspout water and stuff that comes out here is going to go down and over into the dogwood there or whatever, into the hedgerow. That's our best case situation here. But with that, probably dirt on site and then keep moving. Well, dirt in, like pour it in here with the skid steer, and then I've got to over dig the hole that the gate post came out of and back out of here with the skid steer, install the gate post so the gate goes back to working. And then she wants to put a post in the ground out front for one of those little cupboards, like a little library. And then I got to get the skid steer into the dump trailer and get it home, all on Friday, 1-day rental. And then next week we will fill in joists, but next week we'll start with the grading and the plastic and the pea gravel, probably Monday. So joist middle of next week, and then deck boards. Wouldn't that be fun? Oh, we got a special curved multi-level resawn or multi-layer resawn joist out here at the corner, and I really don't think that I'm going to need a post in the middle of it like I thought. Worst case scenario we do, but I don't think we will. Anyway, this is where we are. Thanks for watching. We'll see you. Don's just washing the driveway off. We brought in 6 tons of 1-inch filtered bank run, which is just a scoop of the gravel, scoop of the gravel pit wall, poured through a 1-inch filter. And we brought this all in last week, like I was talking about, while I had the skid steer, and loaded it in here along the berm, which I don't know if you can tell. It's unbelievable how just looking through the camera changes it, but oh, I guess you can see over here, but we roll up pretty good so that this is a nice, comfortable, easy step up, and so water will wash over in there. But I was a little short. I looked at it and didn't know whether I wanted to go back and get another load or not before I returned the trailer, so better safe than sorry. Unfortunately, I was sorry, so we needed more here and just a skim coat throughout. So you can see we kind of go from 1-inch downhill there, and this is going to be from 1-inch downhill there. And again, at the back of the beam, we're kind of right up to it. I don't know if you can see here. Oh, again, at the back, you can see how it rolls down. And so everything will head down into the hedgerow there. The tree will be able to get a drink all out here. We left a 4x4 circle here, or square opening there, and so obviously rainwater and anything that's rolling this way will roll right off in here around the roots just there. But he's got, the tree should have roots out to the extent essentially that the branches go, which is way out here. And then we did 6mm plastic, or no, excuse me, 6mm plastic, 6 mil, which is not millimeters, it's a different gauge. Anyway, 6mm would be like 1/4 of an inch. We rolled up the 6 mil plastic in 2 pieces, kind of fit around everything, and threw the washed pea gravel on top. And I may put a little more pea gravel, I may not. And so now we've got a rim joist and a curved rim joist, and filling in floor joists, and then deck boards. But the landscaping back here is essentially complete. These are the pieces of concrete from around the gate post. This is why I don't pour concrete around a post. You can see it's, just cast up here smoothly against it. But all this porosity, and all of that, negativity, all that negative space, water just sits there, wicks down in there, and then can't easily run out and away through the concrete. So it's sort of encapsulated. Where, of course, water's in the material here on the ground. However, it can percolate away normally or downward with the water table and dry up. And so I prefer to put a footing and just fill with natural gravel soil around it. So we're looking good here, really, really good. This is just arduous because when you estimate and you look at doing the project, you may want to add a little bit, to get up to the level that you're going to be. But, we were here for a couple of days doing this, and that's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. We're no stranger to playing in the dirt. I'm going to let this get rained on, and I'm going to make sure that we don't get major pooling anywhere, because that's, not what we want. We don't want a mosquito breeding ground underneath the deck where everybody hangs out. And I've been up back here in the evenings when it cools off, and there's like a special time when you just start getting eaten alive. So they are back here already, and we don't need to give them any more places to breed. And we don't want the radiating humidity from the standing water to create pockets of humid air underneath the deck, which keeps the relative humidity of the lumber high, which promotes creates an environment that is happy, joy for microorganisms that are eating the wood materials, which is the antithesis of the treatment process and the investment that people make in a deck. So, and the dirt on there that I'm dusting off is something else that I'll wait till we're real dry. We'll get a rain, we'll wash off the tops of everything. Really dry, we'll fill in the joist layout. We'll pull the flashing tape on everything. I wanted to kind of prove that out up here with this brand, which I like, but it's gotten scraped, you know, so we'll redo a couple areas there, and we'll do that and then immediately start with deck boards. We won't be walking on it anymore when we get to that point. Awesome. And I'm sure she loves her full driveway back. As soon as Don is done washing it with this meager garden hose. Wish we had the pressure washer. Oh, and we plate compacted everything. So that was worth the $50 for a half day. Really tightened everything up. Made sure we didn't have any natural low points. Filled in any natural low points that showed up while we packed things down, and so we don't have a bumpy, incline that creates, pools like rice paddy pools all the way down it. We wanted a pretty sheer roll out. And then she's going to do her own project out front with a little free take a piece, leave a piece mini art gallery box. So we put her post in the ground for her and plate tapped her on that. I'm gonna get these stones out of here before somebody hits them with a lawnmower and clocks somebody walking their dog upside the head out in the street. That's a no bueno again. All right, these are all the little things that you do that are part and parcel of premium service. Okay, right? All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you. What's up, everybody? It's time to fill in floor joists in the first bay here. We're content with our grade and our moisture barrier. We're going to copy layout all the way along. Actually, you can see on the drawing. It's the easiest thing. It's easy for us and it's easy for whomever may service or, work here in the future. If your layout's all the same, there's no reason to mix it up. And you'll find that in most new builds and stuff like that. So we're going to, essentially, the way that I looked at this project from beginning to now has been, as we stand here, basically facing the house. So on the left-hand side, we're going to start and have full 16-inch bays all the way along until we make up, this little weird piece at the end, which we may just skip if nobody's watching. Anyway, and that's because it's 6'1", or it's little. It makes no difference, a couple of inches. So, what am I saying? We need to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. What comes after 11? I forget. 12, 13, 14, 15. And 16 pieces at a certain length. Also, you want to be sure of, working from a drawing. You want to check real life too. It makes no difference that you make pieces based on your drawing if, real life it's different. And so I haven't even got a length on there that I know of. I can go back and check actually, but if I just push here quick, I find out that 81, and I've done this already, 81 is what you need, basically. You want to give yourself a little bit of room. I normally give myself at least 1/8 of an inch on the overall measurement, so I haven't got a war of getting the pieces down in there. And 81, frankly, looks good, to prove it to you the whole way here, right? So, did a really nice job of setting up. This is where setting your posts comes in handy. Otherwise, you can make a cascading, a series of floor joists that are cascading down or up in length, however you want to look at that. What are we going to do? We're going to do a batch cut. I've got 2 layers thick, that's 3 inches, and I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 again pieces here, and we're going to just put a fresh end on everybody. What I did was pack everybody tightly up on a pair of sawhorses. You can use clamps, you can ratchet strap a couple times. I just put a 3.5-inch screw, into my sawhorse, so I've got a foothold here and on there, and I'm looking for everybody moving. Not sure if you can see that, but everybody's moving as one piece, and that's desirable. I don't want to be halfway through a cut or somewhere in there and have things start, because these are slippery and wet, treated lumber, and it's kind of a drippy morning, and we're in the shade, and in the middle of your cut, shoo, somebody, the forces change, and the friction holding everybody together changes in any way, you've got a problem and your saw is pushing pieces of wood and it's pinching the blade. That's a catastrophe. Not on the fresh end cut, but once you've made the other, you know, dimensional line and you're cutting on the other end, as luck would have it, that'll happen to you a lot on the other side of it, and that ruins your final cut on all the pieces, or at least a few in that area. That's the danger of doing this, so be aware of that. What's going to allow us to get this done are Bigfoot, or Bigfoot's a brand. Bigfoot's a skill saw brand. This is the Milwaukee 10 1/4, 6 1/2 dozen on that. That's the right way to use 6 1/2 dozen, basically. The Bigfoot saw is a 10 1/4 saw. I'm going to pull that staple out. But note, the large diameter allows for a deeper cut to the arbor, allows to get all the way through 3 inches. It did all of our notching on this job, and it's going to batch cut all of our joists, you know, and so with 2 cuts here we'll make 12 joists instead of doing layout on 12 pieces and sucking down battery power with our little saw that we love. I'm willing to make a concession and run a power cord. It pissed me off already this morning. I've tripped through it a couple of times. The other thing I want to note is, notice how on every circular saw you've got a big side of the shoe and a little side. So we're not going to make this cut like a jackass with a tiny little bit of shoe. I mean, you end up with 3 or 4 inches, but still the weight of the saw is out here. So we're going to come around and we're going to put the majority of the shoe, you know, on what's going to stay for lumber, and we'll let the little pieces fall off to the other side. So I never know how much is too much explanation, but maybe you're just chilling at your desk. Maybe you just want to live vicariously through me, slogging around in the dog poo yard and cutting a bunch of wet 2x8s. Anyway, that's what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. We'll see you. Alright, we did a resaw operation, and then we did a planing operation, and now we're doing a final thickness sanding operation. And I think he's got it at a hair under. Well, we'll start heavy and then we'll take another little bit off. Meanwhile, our outfeed table is like, I don't know, 6, 7 quarter waxed. Is this a lamination? Yeah. And there's another one. Still good sized pieces of what looks like walnut, black walnut. Here they come, smooth boys. Thanks for watching, we'll see ya. Alright, welcome back. We're messing around with this curve. It's gonna do it. The pieces are gonna do it. I'm looking for tangent, which means that the piece of a circle comes around and straightens out, essentially, you know, smooth. I don't want to have you know, not enough circle then to straight. We're looking for a smooth flow here and essentially a smooth flow there, because ultimately we can make up a little bit in the trim of the overhanging deck boards, but I don't want, you know, there's no reason to be sloppy in a foundational step. Sloppiness is best left for the last step, and then just don't be sloppy at all, but certainly not in early stages. So I've got a couple issues though. To start with, it's just me and Dash, who doesn't have thumbs and has a really piss poor work ethic, if I'm honest. Laying down on the job. Secondly, I'd like to use clamps until I'm ready to commit to a fastener, because the more holes I poke in this is a problem, as well as the point load. I mean, pulling on one tiny head of the, you know, there's how many of those? There's probably a dozen or more times surface area on the feet, or the, you know, the, what am I trying to say, Chazzy? The pad on the clamp. Anyway, it's more evenly spread out. I've got to get underneath to get a clamp on the bottom of this, which pushes the bottom edge of my thin board off the surface that I want to be at. Makes me obviously way too tall up here. It'd be nice to have somebody else. The other thing is, there's a 3/8 of an inch, so a pair is 3/4 and 4 is 1.5 inches essentially. I want to add all the way up to 1.5 inches to this level, but I think I'm going to pocket off with the router 3/4 of an inch of this outermost board, and I'm going to basically take that as far as I can, which is to say these are 144 inch, you know, 12-foot strips, but I'm going to basically split the difference in overhang on this end, and then when we come around here, the first 4 layers will stop in the middle of the post, and then the last 4 layers, or 6 layers, and then the last 2 layers of 8 will continue as far as possible in that direction. And that's going to give us a lot of cantilever strength, because to stand on this here, you're looking for this, you know, area, this 1/2 of a post width area of, you know, group, as far as a group of fasteners to, you know, carry the weight out there, and all of this floor joist and all this floor material. You'd much rather have this lamination go as far down in that direction as possible, and as far down in that direction, so that matrix of the glue surface and all the different fastener penetrations are giving you all that strength in terms of a cantilever, because there's still a chance that we need to dig a hole here and put a post right in the center to carry this, you know, amount of cantilever that we're hanging out, which is to say from one post to the other, all of that is sitting out in this way. And that's quite a bit, especially when it's such an enticing step. You know, everybody wants to step up onto that curved edge. This is going to be our high traffic zone here. This, you know, less so. That least of all. In fact, I don't think anybody's going to be stepping over there. I hope not. Anyway, lots of things to consider here. And so, but how to get, and everything's going to be glued too. So it's going to be completely covered with PL Max, every layer. There it is sitting over there. And how to have what I want without this whipping around, flipping down, covered in glue, sticking a bunch of gravel onto it, glue hands, glue fingers everywhere, glue clamps, glue drill gun, screws, broken pieces. This is what you get when you pop one clamp and you don't get the other one at the same time. You know, that's still like a point load on the upper or the lower, and I had a breakage there, which this is my test piece. This is the one that broke at the mill, and so yeah, just a lot of stuff here. Why don't we fast forward to the next episode when I've figured this all out, and I'll save you the headache. Dash, you just keep holding it down, bud. You, Dashy? See, the thing about Dashy is if you mention Copper or Rossi, he perks right up, right? Copper? I don't know why I didn't hear it the first time. Ooh, thanks for watching. We'll see ya. Okay, I needed a little bit of help. There's just too many. I needed more hands than I've got. So Don was here a little bit earlier, and we got 4 layers in. Pretty happy with everything. This through lock hardware it works in a certain window, so it doesn't work any smaller than a certain size, and you have to move up to the next through lock size, because it doesn't let the screw out the other end of this like capture nut. So if your screw bottoms out before everything sucks in tight, then you've got the wrong size. So anyway, I had to add this temporary block because this is like the smallest through lock. It requires another 1.5 inches, which we'll have out here. We're going to do another 4 layers of 3/8, which will create another 1.5 inches. It's going to come over and stop here, which again is I'm going to try and give us a lot of cantilever strength out here by continuing as many layers as possible over. So 4 layers are going to continue on this side because we had 3 total inches, and it was a beam on this side. This is just a rim joist, which is a single layer of 1.5 inches. I suppose it could have been. So anyway, we could have milled 16-foot pieces instead of 12-foot pieces to thin strips, and that we could have started way over there, gone right on by, and rather than taking 3/4 of an inch out of this rim joist and just passing with 2 layers as far as I can go, we could have passed with all 4 layers here and gone to the middle of maybe this post, and then started here with the rim joist. That just would have been an ugly seam right there, whereas this is going to be here. I'm going to try and scarf it. There's just so many different variables. I didn't have the presence of mind to get 16. Everything's just more and more and more and more and more and more money. And you'd be surprised how much time and effort and special material cost went into just curving this one corner. It's worth doing. It's going to look really neat. But we'd started with like this big Bezier curve and stuff on this edge, and it would have been a lot more expensive just to do that. And so, like I said, this seems rather safe, but it still is quite involved, and it's enough for this project in terms of cost. And someday if we do a big curve, we'll have that much more budget and that much more time and energy to put into it. But this is going to be pretty cool. I'll be back tomorrow to put the last 4 layers on, and that last one I'm going to try to scarf so that the seam is really pretty. But boy, is it hard. You wouldn't believe how hard it is to get an accurate measurement, even with a seamstress's tape, like a flexible measuring tape. It just doesn't seem. You're measuring the back side, and then when you add the thickness of the board, you actually have to add a little bit of length. It's tricky. So anyway, this is as far as we got. I've got half the stringers made as well, and my stringer making station over there. We'll look at that in another video. I got to get the second router bit. I burned through one, but it was worth 2 router bits to router all those stringers rather than cut them. I've cut so many stringers by hand with a saw, with a circular saw and the jiggy. I wanted to do it this way this time, and it's going to work out. That little inside round on the inside corner of the stringer won't be a problem at all, because we're going to use 2 deck boards, 1, 2, and the deck boards have a bull nose, and the bull nose will fit right in that curve, and it'll be sweet. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you. What's up, everybody? We've got a bad case of the bends. Maybe it's a good case of the bends. We're bending this wood, man. 1 layer at a time. It's just, you want to be meticulous here. I don't want to see any, I've obviously got a lot of fasteners in here, but I don't think I'm going to apply an appearance board to the, or like a fascia to any of this rim joist. I hadn't planned on it. I'd have to get that to do this bend as well. and it just goes on and on. So I would like the last layer to look really nice. Part of that is scarfing it in, you know, putting a 45 on that's 3/8 of an inch deep here, so that the last piece, you know, and its length is so perfect that it, you know, dies into that, you know, it has a back angle on it too. That's the nature of a scarf. And same on this rim joist over here. So I have yet to decide whether or not I'm going to be able to accomplish that. Right now we did 4 layers last night, left it over till midday today. I added 2 more layers today. Ultimately all 6 of these layers on this side are going to be cut back to this notch in the post, and then we're going to leave 3/4 of an inch on the rim joist and take a pocket 3/4 of an inch deep out to a certain extent. I wanted to wait on that just because there's so many moving parts here. Next thing you know, you've taken too much and you can remake the rim joist or something else. Now this is the one full-length piece that's done the bend so far, and I can, you know, now I get a sense of what kind of a pocket depth I need to do. I'm going to give myself plenty of room. I probably only take 18-20 inches or something. Now the more of that I get, the more protection and more strength on the cantilever out here that I have, like I was talking about before. Just a lot of moving pieces. The clamps are doing okay. I can sneak them underneath, you know, there's enough room underneath here. But these quick grips they have their uses. It's probably one of the first things people are gonna say. I realize I could have a bunch of Bessie clamps or otherwise, you know, Acme thread or C clamps or something, but I don't know, it's just another big investment. I have a lot of these. I like that they have a big footprint. I don't like to point load and crush marks into my wood if I can help it, which those other clamps have a smaller footprint. I have a couple big bar clamps, whatever. Things that I have, things that I don't have. I will be removing these. These are just, I'm clamping these, you know, with the through locks right now in the most important locations: the start, the finish, and right in the middle. One of these layers we made out of 2 short pieces, so there's a seam there, and he's going to be in the middle, but because of those 2 tails we were getting a little bit of a point in the next layer, so I put the kibosh on that and just squeezed the living shit out of it with 3 of those through locks. Otherwise I have been, like I was talking about, all these penetrations are coming through from the back, and I've been, you know, backing those screws up until they're flush, adding a layer with glue, clamping it all up, and then screwing into it from behind to incorporate it into the stack up. And then if I bury the screws, it kind of pulls down tightly. The clamping has been, you know, a variation of through locks, framing screws, clamping, you know, actual clamps, and just massaging it all out so that ultimately everything is tight and there aren't big gaps anywhere. So I'm going to leave this to dry again, long story short. Took the corner braces out of this ledger for the cast iron, and he's got 1, 2, 3 headlock screws. Where are they? You know, 1, 2, 3 all the way around. These are really nice, and they're 2 5/8 or whatever, 2 3/8, whatever they are, for 2 layers of dimensional lumber. Over here I had to head off these floor joists with a pair, and then I had to have room for the tab for the joist hanger itself, so I gave myself 1.5 inches. I just stuck a piece of 2x4 in there for now, but I will just be sliding a piece of treated 2x4 in. I'll leave it short because I don't want to fight with trying to smash past the heads of those screws or anything. I'll leave it short 1 inch or something on both ends, and then I'll use through locks, you know, right through this, through that, through this pair, and out the other side, and just maybe 2 of them, just sort of 1 here and 1 there or something. I mean, it's wildly more than necessary, but just like to be, you know, if anything, more robust. And I took the corner braces out because we're sure that it's square now, because they stayed until everything else was put together around them, which is important because I don't want to put the cast iron on when I'm through and find out this opening has been racked, because the cast iron is the cast iron and it's square, and we're not going to change that, and I don't need to be, you know, I'm going to put that back in there as soon as possible. I kind of had it out to reach around, give a reach around to these double joist hangers. Yeah. And then tomorrow, I hopefully get to another 2 layers, be really satisfied with the outer layer, maybe clamp this up again, but at that time, all the other screws and stuff will be in permanently, and I can, I'll pull like a string down the whole side of the far joist, and then right over to here to put my layout. That's how I'll use, you know, the string to my advantage until I'm aligned perfectly, and I'll snap it, chuck line or whatever, on here to get my layout line. And then I'll put an angle on it that's close to what's necessary, and then I've got angled joist hangers to catch the ends of those that you'll see. I'm sure it's nothing you haven't seen before. I really don't know who watches this channel. Shit. Appreciate Much love to all of you. Half of my stringers have been made. The other half are there waiting. This is as far as I got using a pattern cutting router bit. And, you know, I think we saw this before. The other one showed up this morning, or late last night. It's just a Freud. It's 2-inch cut depth. 1/2-inch diameter, 1/2-inch shank following. I mean, this is like 30 bucks or something. So, like, again, 60 bucks for 2 following bits. Saves me all the time cutting it with the circular saw and the jiggy. So that's how I wanted to do it this time. Then we'll fill those in. Now, this is longer than 20 feet, but I just want to do pairs of 20-foot deck boards as stairs. And so I think we'll leave a little alcove at the front so that, you know, it's 20 feet worth of stringers, and then we'll stop. And the 20-foot deck boards will do up the step. The other thing about that is this deck itself is 1 step up. And so if the end of the stairs came over here, you have people trying to step onto the second step from the edge. It really isn't. It's just nice to see that 1 level step all the way around. So you firstly take that 1 step, and then you step to, you know, step number 2 or whatever. It's just more polished. Gives you a place to put plants and things like that. The one thing that does happen here is at a certain point, and I have to find out what joist bay we would stop at to be able to use full 20s. Because obviously you don't need a piece of stairs that goes right up into a post or is too much to the one side that sort of is enticing. I mean, unless you plan on using, you know, plants and stuff like that, potted plants, using it as risers, then you really do have to go around the corner. There's just lots of things here that we're going to bounce off the customer before we make the final decision. Worst case scenario, go right back to full steps from one end to the other, which is what she planned on, it's what she wanted, and it was what was designed. And I made that face because I'm stumbling over my words, but the point is, I would have to scarf every step. And I'd probably make them out of 12s. I think 24 will get us here. So pairs of 12s, so 4 12s per step with a scarf in the middle. The problem with scarfing any of this is that it's wet, and it's going to shrink, you know, a few percents, maybe 5, as it dries up over the first year. So all the scarves, you can't smash them together any tighter. You know, than completely touching, and when they both shrink a certain bit, you pull a gap. So I almost want to put everything together with tight scarves but few fasteners, and then when I come back next year to look at maybe staining this and stuff for her, pull those few fasteners, shut the scarf all the way, and then fully fasten the whole board down. And the same goes for the trap door hatch over the air conditioner. I want to use scarf joints in the deck boards there, so the trapdoor sits down in and basically the scarves just disappear and you don't know that there's a trapdoor there. Just a lot of fine details that take time to accomplish, but man, am I whipped. I'm going to maybe do a siesta and come back and work a couple hours this evening. And what would I do? I would, I guess, blow all the dirt off the tops of these. I'm gonna put a bead of that sealant, that polyurethane flashing, liquid flashing, in all of these cracks on the tops of all of our pairs and smooth that out. And then we'll pull the flashing tape on all of this joinery, or on tops of all of the framing. Oh, and I may come back and make the rest of the stringers, I guess. I'd like to put one deck board on right where the stringers end, and then I can set them in place and just bump into it all the way down and know that basically it'll be a perfect fit. Whereas I could put all the stringers in and do my best to do that to like a chalk line, and then come and start with boards later and work my way across, and when the board comes over to touch the edge of this grill, you know, because as you look down this beam, it does a very subtle little thing, and so that stuff can show up in the worst place. It's going to be tight here between the grate and the face of the stairs. You know, you don't want to show yourself at an angle or be askewed over those long theoretically parallel things. So, you know, what do you do now so that it's not a head scratcher or time to undo and redo, you know, deck board layout later? This is where we spend all of our time. So when it comes time to do finish work, it just goes and we're done. But here's where we at. Thanks for watching. Yeah, I think you're right, little Dash. Let's go take a cold shower and get something to eat and lay down for an hour and then come back when it's cool. That's one of the benefits of working for yourself. We'll see you. Hey everybody. You're gonna get to watch me do something today instead of listen to me blab on and on about things that I've already done. I made all the stringers for this project using my following bit on my big router. I did buy this bit. It's mine now. I have a variety of these bits. They're essentially various depths, and they have a following bearing on one end or the other, depending on a few different factors. Anyway, that means since the bearing's on the bottom of this bit, it's following the pattern underneath the piece that I'm cutting. And so I've just had to make the first one using, pencil layout, circular saw, jigsaw. And instead of making, 16 more that way, I just bought a couple router bits. It didn't last, the first one didn't last through more than half of them, so I made 8, roughly, if my math is right. But it was a larger diameter, it was a 3/4 of an inch, and from what I understand, in my opinion, with all the machining knowledge that I have, which is relatively minimal, the bigger the diameter, the more of a lever arm you've got, and the more we're asking of the motor to turn it around. I think that was the reason that this one, being 1/2 inch in diameter, has gone further for me. So the way that this works is, and we're down to the last one now, is I, anchored the pattern on top of a sawhorse where I've got the ability to hang down below the edge of it all the way around without hitting anything, and I didn't want any, fasteners or anything in my way, so that I just got it screwed down in the middle. And then I made all my slugs, or whatever you want to call them, the pieces of 2x12, which is almost always what you make a stringer out of, because of the overall width of it being sort of the greatest that you can get commonly, so that you end up with kind of a lot of meat here in the most negative areas of the stringer. That being said, I wanted to get as many out of this. I wanted to be as efficient about this as possible. So my stringers actually, end to very end, are 48 inches exactly. And because you get a little more than an 8-foot 2x4, or 8-foot anything, 2x12, I can make 2 out of an 8-foot 2x12. And it's super efficient because pressure treated lumber is expensive right now. The 2x12 is always the most expensive stick because it's the largest, so by the foot. Anyway, the point is, we get 2 out of every 8-foot 2x12, which is the shortest stick you can buy. And so that's pretty good bang for your buck. And that was all a factor of early on. I was talking about where to go with the elevation of this lower deck. That was a big part of it. Because had I been any lower, a little bit lower, the steps each are 6.5 inches. By the time you get to around a 7-inch step height, it gets to be too much. So a little bit lower, and we would have had to divide out the steps more. The stringer would have ended up longer, and you would have only been getting 1 stringer out of an 8-foot 2x12. And then you could start getting longer, like 12 feet or 16s and stuff, and try to get an odd number as tightly as you can out of that lumber and make it worth getting by the foot. So anyway, blah blah blah. I took a look at this piece. It's got a bad, waney, kind of chunked out edge here, so we'll send that to the area that's going to be cut away. Every one of these I've justified the end and the back, to the pattern itself. I get it to, a point that I'm feeling good about it. You fast forwarded through most of this already, and I don't blame you. I screw the one end down and the other, just flush, and then all we got to do is fire this pig up and let it work its magic. Maybe we can burn this bit up right at the last piece. We'll see. All right, I did not like that, and neither did that router. That's basically the end of that bit. You can see how hard I'm pushing it into the material, how much chattering it's doing. It should have essentially cut like butter, which it did for the first sort of half a dozen pieces. I'm pushing the limits of what it's supposed to be doing. I shouldn't really be tunneling through solid material. I should be overhanging, but essentially the other side of this material shouldn't be encapsulating that cutter. You know, I shouldn't have this negative here. I should be, you know, rough cutting out that negative and then following the pattern to, you know, clean up this edge. The edge quality is poor. Again, I'm pushing the tool, putting a lot of energy behind it, which isn't very safe. You know, you don't want to see people doing that in the workshop if you can help it. That was the last stringer though, and it's finished. And like I say, those were 25 and shipped, you know, about $30 each, so a pair was 60. It went really quickly making all the stringers, and they're all exactly the same. Better than I could really do by hand. Now all you got to do is take this off. And obviously, since we're finished, I counted the pattern. There's one of them. You may have noticed I'm missing a few, but you may have also noticed I'm missing the ones that die into a post, and that's because I've actually got to take the thickness of the post off the back so that they all work out the same to the front. So 1, 2, 3, and we'll set those ones in place. Oh, thanks for watching. We'll see you. Quick video. We got everything taped on the bottom. We're all ready to put boards on. We've got boards started, but we just can't get some clear weather. This is Jeremy. Jeremy's helping out now. He's our right-hand guy. We're gonna really chew through some stuff, I swear to God. As soon as it stops raining on us every day. Just to prove that we're really trying to be here and work, but it's not giving us any cooperation. So we're gonna pack it in for today. Here's our 20-footers and our 16s. Just put my hat on. Yeah, we'll be back as soon as the weather's cooperating. Thanks for watching. We'll see you. Welcome back. We're finally putting some boards down. We got the lower deck we're starting with, so we got the tops of all of our framing lumber taped off. Our curved joist got taped. All the ends of our posts got taped. And Jeremy's our new guy. He's helping us put our boards down. We're gonna do all of our seams through here and over where he's working there. So in the event that you know, we got two ends of a board, I don't like that to fall on the center of one joist if I can help it, because the whole area just holds onto material and leaves and stuff like that. These are pretty tight right now. We're dialing it in, but they're all going to shrink down quite a bit. We had a ton of rain the last few days. They were wet right to start with, and they couldn't do anything but soak up more water the last few days. So we're setting them all pretty tight, but we should end up with at least 1/8 of an inch gap on everything after everything dries in the sun. We've also got some composite shims that we're using just to get the ends of everybody in these areas where they're coming together to come out pretty flush, because that's, you know, the fit and the finish that you know, in your bare feet and stuff when you're enjoying the deck. It needs to be nice and smooth. So we're working our way from the edge of the grate to the stairs. There'll probably be a custom rip piece for the front of the stairway, and then we'll fill in from there over to here, leaving everything long. And we'll snap a line and trim it, and then we'll router the ends, the outside edges of everything when we're finished. Same with these stairs. This is a test. We're gonna round the ends, but not the short side, so you still have a sharp corner. Instead of rounding up this edge, then you end up with a, come on, end up with a round on there too, which we don't want. So we're gonna, you know, round over the long sides of everything here, and one full 20-foot deck board does each, you know, a pair of them does each stair, and then we'll have a riser cover that we'll make out of a rip of a deck board for every one of those. So then once we've got this done, we'll dial in the top framing, tape it, throw boards on it. So we'll see you. Let's come back after we've got this finished up here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you. What's up, everybody? We have been busy all week as much as possible. We put our lower deck all down. Everything's hanging off like a little bit. This outer course has been ripped so that we're just 1 inch basically over the front surface of the beam. And we're gonna ultimately plot out the curve and do that cut too, but I just don't want to get too crazy right now. It's more important that we make it through putting boards down, getting them out of the driveway, just making sure everything's been applied. Then we can take things back too that we don't need. I have moved to finishing up around the door, and so I wanted to take a look at this here. I did my absolute best to get out to the plane of the existing wall with the sheeting that I had to add. A couple pieces in here to close in the corners. As far as framing inside, I ended up making just a couple simple braces here. I got a measurement there and a measurement across the top, and something that came in tight here. I'll probably end up shimming this, and then you know, we'll backfill with expanding foam, and that carries that piece of OSB on all 3 sides. And in the end, when I trim, it gives, not only is this 3/4, given what was on the house for thickness, that's already enough to carry the hardware that holds the trim on, but hitting a 2x4 behind it, you know, won't hurt us at all. This nail flange is coming off. It just, this door is extremely plumb. I mean, as you go wider and wider, it's important to be plumb even on like a 30-inch door, but the bigger the door, the bigger the slab, and if you're a little out of plumb, the whole thing falls open or falls shut, twists all up when you're trying to run it. It's a nightmare. It has to be plumb, and it just meant that, you know, we start back here real good and tight, but as we stand it up, we just get further and further away from the sheathing, so it's getting cut off. And we're going to do some real trickery here to make sure that I'm 100% confident for the install, weatherproof, everything, but I just have no choice. I mean, I can't tip the house toward us at all. That's not happening. Over here, we gotta let the air conditioner breathe, and we just took enough for that for right now. I'm gonna come up with a cast iron insert grate for this, and when I know what it is, then we can do a final hole there, and even maybe like a rabbet on it for so that it sits in flush. And we dialed in our, you know, the surrounding edges for our cast iron piece down here. This notch still needs a round on it, and this edge has been trimmed back and rounded where it belongs. I think I'm going to carry the little ends of the deck board right across the edge of the stringer, and then I might double this up. Oh yeah, I will, because to add 1.5 inches here will get us to the back of the stringer, and then we can fill that in, so it's clearer when I come over here and look. Basically copy and make it narrower, but what we did here was add a 2x4 to the back of there's the joist, and then the stringer is attached to it, and then I blocked out with a 2x4 to get us to the back of the stringer, and then we can fill in fascia of some kind. And I think we're going to change these. These will stay, and these we're going to move over so that their crack is lined up with this crack, or so that it's right in the middle. That's TBD. This was kind of funky here. We came in with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 total boards, and it didn't quite work out. We had like a 3/4 rip here, and it was because we had actual 5.5 boards, which is how they should be. But in our stack, it gave us trouble somewhere else. Other places where we had 5.5s and 5 5/8, or vice versa, gave us trouble, so we used it to our advantage here, and we found a board that was 5 5/8 hard, if not, you know, 5 13 or something like that, 16ths. So adding those all up with a slightly bigger gap, that gets us to the face of this post without having a rip there. So it was worth rebuilding a little bit just for the sake of a clean look to it, but kind of loving things here. Jeremy's our new guy, but he got his easy up, keeping the sun off of our back right now. It's really hot. We got the fan going. I'm trying to close in around the outside of that door, finish all the surfaces of the deck and trim up their edges. And then we're actually gonna pivot out of here into a new deck elsewhere, because our pergola lumber isn't gonna be done at the sawmill. I got the order in early, but he's had a hell of a year, and it was his dad was doing the Sawyer work before COVID. Sadly, he passed away due to COVID, so Junior's been trying to catch up. But basically, they're way behind. We don't have pergola lumber, so we'll come back and do the pergola after the next deck project this year. So we'll be here in the fall to finish up, but I think it'll be really pretty back here then. All right, but we'll come back and look when we got into that point. Thanks for watching. We'll see you.